very lucky to have Siobhan join us, and Siobhan is a GB wheelchair basketball player, Paralympian. I'm sure she will tell you more about herself, and basically we're just gonna hear from Siobhan, hear about her journey with CP, her career, thinking about fitness like we've been talking about all month, and obviously, of course, her career as an athlete. So yeah, Siobhan, if you're happy, over to you.
Right, I've never actually shared my screen before, so let's see if this will. Yes, so does it? Everyone see it?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Let me just put it onto big screen. So, a little bit about me before I do the presentation. Obviously, I've got cerebral palsy in a quite a mild form, so I can still walk. I'm quite high functioning. So I might have a little bit of a different view about my access to sport compared to some of your levels of CP, but I hope that I can just show a little bit of an insight in what's possible, and that it doesn't matter what your limitations are. There is many different things that are capable, no matter your level of impairment. So just a little bit about me. So I'm an identical, let me go on to the next slide. So I'm an identical twin. I was born 8 weeks premature, and that's how I got CP. They don't actually really know whether I was from the womb or from the birth that I contracted CP, but my sister's able-bodied and I'm disabled, so I don't really know about being disabled, because growing up my parents treated me and my sister and my brother, who's in the photo in the top left, exactly the same. So I went to every swimming class, every dance class, every horse riding lesson, you name it, I was there. Yes, I had to do it differently. Yes, most of the time I was being held up by my dad because I couldn't stand up and balance or do anything without any support at that time, at that age. But I had free reign to literally do whatever I wanted. I spent quite a lot of my childhood in and out of hospital for various surgeries and procedures and broken bones and various things, but I never let it hold me back, and was never treated any differently, and never ever used the word CP, cerebral palsy, or disability growing up. So I was kind of, rightly or wrongly, blinded away from the disabled world. Things were adapted in my house for me, and it was only when I went into public settings that I probably struggled. And through primary school, it's a very safe environment, and I was able to be in a mainstream school, was very academic, did really well at primary school, did PE lessons exactly the same as my peers. I had a teaching assistant with me, but for me at 7, 8, 9 years old, didn't know any different. I just thought it was really cool that I had an extra member of staff with me all the time. Was able to go on school trips and do everything, went on residential trips and things like that. And then when I got to the age of 11, things started to change, and that's when I realised that I had cerebral palsy, I suppose, if that's a bit weird. So I'd done a whole 11 years of not even really knowing that I was disabled. I wore AFOs, used a day chair to get around for long distances, but didn't really know what that meant, didn't really have an understanding of what later the impacts would be. And I started secondary school and was told that I couldn't do PE. So for a child that had done everything, was able to do absolutely everything as a child, to then reach 11, 12 and be told that I couldn't do PE, my world literally shattered in front of me. I didn't know what to do. I became inward, so I really struggled to then make friends. I used to be quite an extrovert. I'm extrovert now, but I went through a stage of being introvert, wasn't able to make friends or socialize, found it really difficult to be happy and enjoy myself, and found school a major challenge. Literally woke up, did my lessons, came home, and during my PE lessons was put into a student support centre and was isolated from everyone else, was treated differently. It was the first time that having a disability made me realise that I was different in a negative way, and I really struggled to get over that until I found sport. So my parents and my sister, so without my twin sister, I don't think I'd have even found wheelchair basketball. I kept pestering my school. I didn't. My parents kept pestering the school saying, look, she shouldn't be isolated. This is not fair. They kept saying that I needed to come out of mainstream education and go into an environment that would meet my needs better. But I knew that that wasn't something that I wanted to do. I wanted to stay with my sister and I wanted to achieve my dreams exactly the same as I had done for the previous 11 years. So my school sent me to an event called Playground to Podium, which allowed me to try not millions, but a lot of Paralympic sports. And it was wheelchair basketball that I loved. And I honestly think at the time, the reason why I loved it was because it got my happiness back, it got my social skills back, it got me meeting people that were the same as me. They didn't all have CP, they all had, some had spinal cord injuries, some of them are able-bodied, so you can play wheelchair basketball and not even have a disability. And I think for the first time, looking back, when I was a child I didn't really see it, but looking back now, that was kind of where I thought, you know what, I don't need to have someone tell me what I can do. I can go out there and do what I want to do and achieve what I want to do, put my mind to it. So the bottom left picture, if you can see, is a photo of London 2012, which a girl called Georgia, her sister, competed at. And that was where, so I was, what, 12 then? I'm doing my maths, yeah, 13 then. 13 when I was watching London 2012. And that picture is actually of me sitting in the crowd. That's me taking that photo at a wheelchair basketball game. And I remember saying to my dad, I want to do that one day. Like, I want to do this. Now, at this point, I don't know how many of you know many rules about wheelchair basketball. I couldn't even reach the string of the net. So I hadn't even scored my first basket at this point. So you can imagine my dad's reaction of, all right, Siobhan, all right, yeah, okay, we'll see if this is possible. Not sure, we'll see what you can do in a couple of years' time. And that was it. I was hooked then on sport. I was doing absolutely anything that I possibly could to become the best version at that time that I could make this a dream, a reality. And in the top right is the first major tournament of junior level that I won. And I was the captain of the team, and we became on to be the most successful junior team nationally that there's ever been. We won it 7 years on a row. So we won it as long as I possibly could be for juniors. We won it. And then it finally happened. The GB became a possibility. And in 2013, post-London, they were doing a massive recruitment process. And I was invited along. Again, I could finally hit a basket, but I was still terrible. So as probably many of you know who have CP on this call, coordination isn't one of our strong points. So doing more than one thing at once isn't something that we necessarily excel at. And obviously, wheelchair basketball, I'll say if I can get you a video up in a bit later, but it involves a ball, pushing a chair, which I wasn't very good at because I could walk, catching, talking to people, pushing, not in a straight line, background noise, so many of the variables, and then I had to try and do it. But again, I didn't let that stop me, and in 2013 I started to join the GB pathway. So I wasn't officially a member, but I was on the process to hopefully becoming one. And in 2015 I was selected for my first GB junior tournament at the Europeans, and we finished in second place. And then again later on in 2015 I went to Beijing. So I'd then been on a plane, I'd been as a child on holiday, but I was away from home from my parents, and I was finally wearing a GB vest on a plane, traveling the world, competing in my sport, an absolute dream come true. And I was the first person, I believe, I think there was one back in the 1970s, but people that there's record of with cerebral palsy to ever make a GB national team. So that is something. There's now one other girl that's now doing it. So there's only 2 of us in the whole of the UK, and I think there's probably maybe only one other in the whole of the world that have made the GB pathway. So yeah, that's quite a good thing to have to my name, and something that I'm actually really proud of. And then in 2016, was the Rio Paralympic Games, and at that point I was doing my A-levels, and sadly my parents wanted me to do my A-levels over going to Rio. So I was a reserve for the Rio Games, and naive 17-year-old that I was, thought that was the worst thing in the world, thought, I was never going to make GB again because I missed out on this Paralympic Games. But in hindsight, it was actually the best thing I ever did. So I missed Rio, got my A-levels, managed to get into university, got a degree, carried on training full time. I'll skip that slide and come back to it. and then made the Tokyo Paralympic Games this summer. Which, to represent your country at a Paralympic Games, it gives me goosebumps just talking about it. Something that I never thought was possible as a 12-year-old, trying to get into sport, trying to find something where I felt normal, if that's such a thing, and part of society, finally became a reality. We had to do it behind closed doors because of COVID. No crowds, was horrendous not to be there with my family. Performance wise, we finished 7th, so it was a bit of a shame because we are currently 2nd in the world and 2nd in Europe. But just to be there and to experience something like that will stay with me forever. Going back a slide now. Without these people on this screen, none of this would have been possible. And I think that's something that I can probably share with you all so you can relate to a little bit more, is you don't have to do everything alone. And I think for a good proportion of my life, I was this strong, independent, stubborn person that would shout at my parents for making me do physio, shout at them for making me do extracurricular activities and everything like that. But without them, I wouldn't be wearing this GB. I'm not wearing it now, but I wouldn't have the GB flags. I wouldn't have represented my country. I wouldn't have achieved the things that I've achieved. And now, being an adult, so to speak, I can now go back and thank them and realise that, you know, use your people around you to achieve what you want to achieve. And then this happened, which is very bizarre. I don't know what many of you know about the Commonwealth Games that's happening this summer. We are the first, wheelchair basketball is the first time it's ever going to be in the Commonwealth Games, and we are the first all disabled team to be competing alongside able-bodied sport. So for me then to be chosen to be the poster girl for this is absolutely phenomenal. Yes, I want to go and win a gold medal. Yes, I want to represent Team England at Commonwealth Games. But for me right here, what we can achieve as a CP athlete and as a disabled athlete, I can't wait to see the transformation we're going to bring. The conversations that we can have to showcase that we are normal people. We aren't scary. We might have to do things a little bit differently, but we can still hold conversations. We can still do things in the same as our able-bodied peers. We just have to adapt a little bit. And I did a head teachers conference on Monday, speaking about not doing PE and the provisions and the lack of provisions and having to constantly battle and fight to feel included within society. And they were the huge debates going, well, we do this and we do that and we do that and we do that. And I went, yes, but none of us can do it because you've never had the conversation with the actual disabled individual. You constantly just presume what we can and can't do. So for me, for you guys on the phone call that want to get involved with sport, that's a bit under my slides. I'll finish my thing because it's easier for me to speak to you about. I think the biggest thing that I can share with you all that want to get involved with fitness at any level, if that's just going out in your chair more, or doing keep fit exercises, or accessing physio more, or joining a local sports club, is just go out there and do it. Don't be told that you can't do it. Because I'm not saying that you're going to make a national team, because I didn't think it was going to be possible. You might do. You might be really good at bocce, or you might be really good at swimming, or whatever the sport might be. I'm not going to try and recruit all of you to wheelchair basketball, even though I'd love that. But I think the biggest message that I can share with you all is just go out there and achieve whatever that is. I know this discussion is about fitness, but if it's a local hobby, if it's art that you really enjoy, don't be ever told no, because I was told no. It made me sad. I then told everyone yes, and now I've achieved what I can achieve. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I could be here all night, so I don't want to eat into you questions too much, but yeah, if anyone's got anything you want to know, share away.
Amazing, thank you. I mean, I was like frantically making notes and observations and stuff and questions as we were going through, so like, if it's all right, am I all right to
Absolutely,
just yeah so, and obviously I've looked at the chat as well, and so I guess I'll just start with the chat. Actually, Claire made some comments. So she said, that happened to me too. I had to miss my first long course swimming nationals for my GCSEs. Nobody at the time considered you can get your exams moved. And she also said, I did my most competitions at uni when nobody could stop me entering. So yeah, obviously
I moved I didn't do my GCSEs or my A levels at my school. I did them at where we were based, our training centre, and I was very fortunate that I was part of a GB setup, and I know that's not the case for everyone that wants to do sport. But yeah, I'm actually kind of glad that I took some time away. At the time, it wasn't the best decision, but I think now looking back, I think to be the most well-rounded person that I could be, to gain every qualification that I possibly could when it was the right age to gain it with your peers, was the best decision that I made. And I love that you've just put you in a vertically different PE. That makes my heart happy.
Yeah, I was really lucky that there was a good good special needs unit in the school I was at. So it was a mainstream school, but they had a good special needs unit, and they knew how much I enjoyed sport. So there were people with more severe impairment than me that would do PE and that would do physio instead of PE, say. Yeah. But I was still included in PE, and I actually did short course GCSE PE. So I was very lucky from that point of view. But yeah, it was being able to compete when similar to you. It felt like at the time, I know that their intentions were good, but it felt like at the time that my parents felt like education and work was more important than the swimming, because I was a swimmer. It kind of felt like the swimming was never kind of number one priority, but you know, I enjoyed it because some people say, you know, I got best of both. So
you still do sport now?
Best of both worlds. Right?
Still do sport now?
So the issue now is because I no longer compete, I'm not competing. I've now actually struggled to find the motivation to exercise because I'm so used to being in that training mindset. And now my body kind of doesn't cope with it as much as it did, say, 10 years ago. I struggle with that sort of just get myself to do, like you say, just the simpler stuff in some ways, because I'm so used to doing the kind of the hardcore training for competition, that scaling it back, but just doing those little bits of exercise is so I've almost gone kind of backwards and struggled to sort of doing it for fitness rather than for competition, because it's quite interesting. I mean, I am doing swimathon again this year, but that's now only 8 weeks away, and I still haven't got back in the pool. So
get in the pool, Claire.
That would be the first step, wouldn't it? Just get back in the pool. And
even when I have weeks off, even when I'm supposed to have full rest weeks, I still do some level of activity. And I think can't shy away from the fact it's easy for me to say because I've got CP, so I can relate to you all, but we as a condition need to constantly get our brain muscle memory there. So obviously it takes so much longer for the messages to, I'm not going to give a science lesson, but obviously to go to all the limbs that you want working that don't work as quick as your brain wants it to go. So I was in the gym last night, and I know the charity saw it. It was the first time I'd done a PB in weeks because I was too scared to not do the personal best, because I knew that my brain knew that I could do it, but I didn't know if my body would. And I was in a public gym, so normally in a GB environment I train just with the girls, so it's a very safe environment for me. There's probably only 10 or 12 of us in there at the time. If you fail an exercise, they don't care, they give you a laugh, because they might not have CP, but they've got another impairment where they've just fallen from the gym because they've got one leg or whatever X might be. I was in a public gym last night and I was like, oh, what about if I drop it? What about if they laugh at me? What about if I fall off the bench? All these messages are going through my brain. So don't, just because you're not an elite athlete, that it's not a normal thing to be scared about wanting to achieve fitness. But the biggest thing I can do is just go and do it, because once I did it,
I think I'm just too all or nothing. Does that make sense? Maybe there's a little bit of an all or nothing attitude when we're athletes. I don't know, but it's like either do it and do it properly, or don't do it at all. When actually, even just like you say, like getting back in the pool for like, I don't know, 15 minutes or something would still be a start, and I'd still be getting some exercise. Absolutely. You know, I think I've struggled to make that adjustment to kind of what would you call it? I was going to say normal exercise rather than elite exercise. But no, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I find, I don't know about everyone else, but I find as someone with CP, like just kind of keeping yourself ticking over is so important. So, you know, like we're having the conversation here around like elite sport and things like that, but actually, like we're saying, just keeping moving. And I know we're not in lockdown anymore, but so many people were saying through lockdown with CP that actually we've all kind of gone backwards. So we've all taken that backwards step. So it's just about kind of finding our feet again and just, you know, doing a little bit of movement. I think that's so important. And I think, you know, so I guess on that, thinking about like movement and stuff, I know obviously Siobhan, you're an elite athlete. Would you be able to tell us, you know, kind of the kind of physio, I guess, and the PT stuff? So you touched on the gym around you know, the GB gym. I don't know if that's what it's called, but I feel like
no, that's fine. That's
GB
fine.
gym's got a ring to it. So.
Yeah, that works. I might start calling it that. So I'll start as what I did growing up compared to what I get now. I think that will give you a bit more picture of the lack of provision for physio that there is out there. As probably most of you know. So growing up, I had really proactive parents. So you'd go to your NHS appointment, you'd get a 6-week block of physio. They would then deliver it for 12 weeks, even if the block had finished. So growing up, and I went to Oswestry, I did targeted training, I did everything that was offered to me. It was really good. Got to 16, decided I didn't want any more surgery that they wanted to do, because a lot of mine now, because I walk, I might not walk aesthetically pleasing compared to everyone else, but I can walk pretty well. My high function, I can climb stairs with handrails and things like that. Most of my surgery was only going to be cosmetic based. So it was going to lengthen hamstrings and cut some things up and retie them in different places. It's too much for me to miss sport. So they discharged me from hospital as soon as I reached 18, and said because I was part of a GB programme that I would get the physio provisions there. However, the physio that I have as an athlete compared to a person with CP are two different things. So the physio that I get as an athlete is to maintain my athlete physique. So to maintain my shoulder movement to be able to shoot the basketball, or to strengthen my wrist to be able to push my chair, or to work on core exercises, things like that. It's only now, because I'm very lucky, my sister's now trained to be a physio, that she can now help me a little bit. And my physio, my GB physio, obviously works in Paralympic sport, so understands people's impairments and wants to make them better. But my physio compared to what I did have is two different things, and I could probably do a lot more with my legs. But because it's just sport related, so I could probably do a lot better job myself with my personal physio. And PT wise, really difficult to perform that relationship. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's fantastic, because it's not been. As soon as a girl on the team had a spinal cord injury or was an amputee, they gave them a program, very straightforward. They were the 10 exercises you did, went away and did them and made changes. I turned up, they looked at me and went, well, you can walk, so you can do X, Y, and Z. Did X, Y, and Z with me. I couldn't do it. And I didn't have any explanation, because I had no knowledge of how the gym worked. I'd done a bit with, like, my dad had done a bit of gym over the years, but again, no degree in it, didn't really understand how to write a program, didn't understand how it would work. And the essence, we call it SNC, so strength and conditioning coach at the time, was like, wow, what do you mean you can't do it? You're just not trying hard enough. I'm like, no, what you don't seem to understand is me doing two things at the same time. It takes me time to learn it. And our program's run on a 6-week rotation, depending on where we were in the season. I've now extended mine to a 10-week compared to everyone else's. So the first 2 weeks, I don't even record the weights. There's no point me even writing them down, because I'm literally just holding the bar or the machine or whatever X may be. And then I start to make progression. So it usually takes me 4 to 6 sessions of a new program to feel really comfortable with it. And that's me training as an elite athlete full time now for 7 years, and I'm still at that process. So don't be nervous if you try something and you can't do it, because you will eventually be able to. You'll just have to start with no weight. Then you'll have to start with, so my bench press last night, I did 55 kilo, but it took me 6 months to just do the bar, which is 20. So it's taking me probably 3 or 4 years to add 25, 30 kilo onto the bar. And I think that's the biggest lesson that we as a sport have learned. So we've got a couple of CP athletes coming through. They're basically just sending them to me to say, look, this is what she's doing. But I think that's what people don't understand. And we've got another girl on the national team who's got CP who's I forgot to mention the classification system. Probably should have mentioned that. She's a 1.5 and I'm a 3. So a 1 pointer is the most impaired, a 4.5 is the least impaired. A 4.5 is usually, so just generic, a below-knee amputee, bit of a dodgy knee, bit of a dodgy ankle, down to a 1, which is spinal cord injury from chest, paralysed. A 3 is basically everyone else they can't classify, so coordination-based things, spinal bifida, CP, some viruses. And Michaela Bow, she's CP, but she can't stand. She has some core function, but it's heavily impacted on our left side, so can't really use this hand at all. And they used to say, well, Kayla can do it and she can't stand, but you can't do it and you can stand, or I can do it. And they used to compare us, and I'm like, no, because you can't compare cerebral palsy. You literally can't compare person A to person B. It's just how it works. So yeah, I think where Claire's pitting about getting easily frustrated, I got easily frustrated just as much as my coaches got frustrated. And now I've got established within the team, it's easy for me to have them conversations. And it's easy for me to be an advocate of people now. And I see people in the gym now, the juniors coming through saying it's okay, keep trying, don't worry if the coach says you should be able to do it, like it's all right, just stick with it. So the biggest thing I'll probably learn is willpower. There's no point crying about it because you can't change it, and in 6 weeks time when you can do it, it all pays off.
No, absolutely.
I hope that answers your question. I went a bit off on the time.
But I think that's like, just to add into the mix as well, so I also play wheelchair basketball and I'm a 2.5, so there's no like cookie cutter for CP, is there at all? And I think that's
no. And I could possibly be a 2. This is the thing, I could possibly, depends which classifier looks at you. I could possibly be a 2.5, I could be a 3.5, I could be a 2. So my right side is so strong. So I'm a quadriplegic, but I've now learned I don't use my left at all. I don't even shoot with my left. There's loads of photos of me on Google just using my right. But if I have a bad day or haven't slept well or nutrition well or whatever, I could not even catch a ball. So there were so many variables in the sport. And that's why it's great when people with CP break through in the sport, because we're not supposed to. Like we're just not supposed to play a sport like this. So
no, absolutely. Emma, you have your hand up.
This is totally fascinating to me, but and the thing that's coming through for me is about you understanding your body so that you can say, actually I need 10 weeks, not 6 weeks, and you touched on the gym, and you touched on like when you were doing it in the gym yesterday when it wasn't your gym, and you were also talking about when you were in schools. So I just wondered, like, if you were going to go approach gyms now to say, because I know that's something that kind of comes up quite a lot for people, is not feeling like there is a place for them to go and exercise, that it's not welcoming, or that things are not set up. And like you say, I think it takes quite a lot of inner strength and character to turn around to somebody else and say, actually, this doesn't work for me, or to feel okay, having been in that situation where you're lifting things which is purely just the bar with no weights on it whatsoever. If you were going to give some advice to gyms and to us going into the gyms, what would you say to them, and what advice might be for us going into those gyms to ask for? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think public gyms are such a scary place if you're able-bodied or disabled. So if you don't have any gym knowledge, walking into that gym for the first time is a scary place. And I don't think that should be something that you shy away from. I think you should acknowledge that it's okay to feel nervous to walk into that gym, and that it's okay to have them feelings, and that your able-bodied peer down 2 rows on the next machine is having those troubles too. So just because you're disabled, that doesn't change. There is huge work being done. And I wonder if I can probably get me and Emma paired in at the end with an app called Exercise. Ali Jarrad, the powerlifter, who I know really, really well, and he would probably be a great person to actually get something sent through for Fitness Week. He doesn't have, he knows me very well, so he has some knowledge of CP, but he doesn't have CP. But what he's providing at the moment is, especially commercial gyms, I'm not on about little backstreet private ones, he's going to them and saying, where's your power bench? So where's your wider bench? Where are your disabled changing rooms? Where are your ramps into the gym. Where are your distance between the machines that you can get your chair down? Because I don't walk in a straight line, and sometimes I can't even fit down the gaps that there are, let alone someone in a chair. Where are your strength and conditioning coaches that have done a level 2, level 3 qualification in adaptive sport and things like that? For me, going around some gyms, now I'm from Coventry, but I live in Sheffield, so I've had some experience in both cities. And luckily, the gyms in Sheffield, because I know more people now in the gyms up here, and I've got some relationship, and I can makes it nice thing that I can use my disability in a positive way because they want to support me because I'm a GB athlete. So unfortunately, they can then post on their social media and go, oh, we've had Siobhan train with us tonight, which is great. But then at the end of the night, I'm like, yes, but I haven't been able to do X, Y, and Z because I can't actually undo the clips on the bar because they're them squeezy ones, not the twisty ones. They're different weights that I can't hold and things like this. So for me, before you sign up to a gym, I would go and speak to the manager or go and speak to someone of some sort of authority within that environment, and just have a conversation with them and say, look, this is what I want to achieve. This is what I want to do. Is this the gym that you can provide? I'm not asking for a bespoke training program. I just want to be able to come here and do 5 exercises for an hour and feel the same as my brother, sister, friend, cousin, whoever it might be. Can we train together? If they then say no, that's when I think there needs to be a fuss made and say, why? Is it just because they're too lazy to have a conversation with you? Because that's how I've found sometimes. I just find it too much like hard work. And also the biggest realization I've made is you're probably not going to have the most perfect commercial gym. So even in our EIS, so even in our GB gyms, they're still not made perfectly disabled people. And I think once I can't share a video. I've tried to put on the presentation, but I'll put my socials up at the end. You go onto my Instagram, you'll see my gym techniques in a public gym. So I put a plate to put my foot on, or I put a cushion under my back. So I just take them things with me. So you'll start to learn as you've been in the gym for 6 weeks what works for you. And there's different straps that you can get for really reasonable prices off places like Amazon and eBay and things like that. That if you can't fully grip with one hand, like I can't, you can use an active hand strap to put around your lat pull machine. So you don't necessarily need to rely on the gyms all the time. You can do a lot of things to help you. And at home as well, if you don't.
Sorry, I was going to ask a follow-up question to that, sorry. If you were going to give us some advice of what, like, if we were, I constantly have my hand on the Amazon button. So if you would suggest 2 things that I can buy that I could use at home. I know we're all at different levels, but what are the go-to pieces
you
of
can
equipment?
do most things with you can buy a packet of 5, packet of 6 TheraBand resistant bands that don't involve, they're really cheap and pretty much millions and millions of places sell them. You can go to Decathlon, Argos, Amazon, eBay, whatever you want to use, whatever's the best provision for you. And you can, during lockdown, because I didn't have access to any weights, so when I started to train, you can attach them to your settee, you can attach them to your back of your wheelchair, you can attach them to your back of your hoist or your banister or whatever, and you can do a range of exercises. I can even put some videos together and send them across to you, so you've got some visuals if you want. But just anything that's more basic movements, so anything that makes into a shape for a Y, any pulling exercises that moves your back of your shoulders. And what else would I say that you would have to? Ideally, you could get a dumbbell or something, but and again, some of them now lockdowns happened aren't actually bad prices. But at home, I was just using tins of soup, tins of beans, and I tell you what, the best thing is for if you've got soup and you want it: a wooden spoon and a piece of string. Arms straight, rolling it up and down. My life, your arms will burn. Nat's face now is laughing. She's obviously done it during lockdown.
Yes.
Your shoulders and your arms will burn, and that's literally just, I can't see, but a piece of string, or and if you want to, you can show off and put a can on the end if you want to make it heavier, but piece of string and a rolling pin and roll it up and down works on coordination and burns your forearms like no. So yeah.
So Siobhan, can we be cheeky and ask you that perhaps following this you could send us some things that we can.
Of course I can, absolutely.
Amazing. Amazing.
Great, thank you. Dean, you have your hand up.
Hi there. Hi there. I just wanted to ask a question. It kind of follows on from what Emma was asked and how you answered her question. My neighbour across the road from me, she's professional GP Paralympian. She trains with the professional with the GP fencing team, national fencing team, and she has a person that comes to her every Friday night or every few weeks from a specialised gym. They specialise in fencing. So how can you get that so like for yourself and other people, they're wanting to do a particular sport, and they've obviously tried sports, but they found a few sports, and they want to find they've found their niche, and they want to find a specialist trainer in a specific field. How, and I'm not talking about myself here, I want to make that quite clear, but I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate here in a way. For people who found the niche in the market or in sport, and they want that, you know, they want a fencing trainer, or they want a basketball trainer, someone that trains specifically, but somebody who has access needs, specifically someone who has access needs.
I think the biggest thing for me, and I think how I would go about finding them, luckily I've obviously got background with S&C coaches, so our S&C coach that was at Sheffield has now gone into a organisation by himself where he's now looking at para sport as a whole. It's very lucky that there's a fencing one. I used to do fencing, so it'd be interesting to see who is providing that. But I think the biggest thing is just to have conversations with people. I think it's really hard to be a disabled S&C coach, not to have, I don't mean them to have a disability, to coach disabled people, I should word that a bit better, to coach people with impairments, because no two people are the same. There are hundreds of YouTube videos out there. Ella Beaumont, who I know really well from Wheelchair Basketball World, she is a phenomenal advocate. She's a spinal cord injury, and we probably could do with sharing her link with you guys. Actually, she's done hundreds of home videos during lockdown that use household equipment. So I think the biggest thing that people get scared of is that, like, people like me that come on as an elite athlete and they think, oh wow, we need to train as hard as her, we need to train every day, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to buy this equipment. I actually felt like Nat was saying, any movement's better than no movement. Moving for 10 minutes more than you were yesterday is going to make more of an impact on CP than it was the day before. So I think anything of any movement, to find a specialist S&C coach within sport and the disability world are very few, far in between, which is really sad, and I would love to hopefully one day change that, but I don't think it's going to be a one-man band that will be able to do that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether some of these athletes will go into that role. I think there'll be something I'd like to try and do in the future. But yeah, I think Google, YouTube, there's loads of videos on YouTube. Your internet's your best friend. It became our best friend during lockdown, even tonight doing Zoom, isn't it? So a lot of people, we did all of our exercise classes as a group, so you don't feel as stupid if you make mistakes as a GB team. And I wonder if there's something that you could set up as a charity, or as if 3 or 4 of you that want to get involved in fitness in some way, Monday morning, let's all be there at 10 o'clock and have a biscuit afterwards together and discuss what's happening in your lives and just make it a bit of fun and enjoyment. Because I think if I love sport and I love what I do, and I think as soon as I lose that happiness, then I won't do it.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for answering that. Cheers, thank you.
And I think what you said there, as soon as you lose that happiness, you won't do it. And that's the like biggest thing, isn't it? So you just, as like you say, it needs to be something that you enjoy. So, you know, we could sit here and say, yeah, go play wheelchair basketball, it's great, but other people might not enjoy it. So it's about finding, I think,
and that's
everyone.
what I always say when people say, oh, you're trying to recruit people. I would love to have 10 people with CP playing on wheelchair basketball national team. It would be phenomenal for the disability, it would be phenomenal for the sport, but quite frankly that probably isn't going to happen. So I might as well do a better job at saying, what can you do to benefit your disability in a positive way? You know, there's people like Paul that are in electric chairs that their movement's less, but what can they do that can pull themselves up out of bed to make them stronger the next day so their carers don't have to do as much work? Or what can they do when they're transferring to use, see, it sounds stupid and really easy stuff, but what can they do to make their transfer to the toilet easier? Can they lift a few more resistant bands 3 times a day to make that easier for themselves? Because I know through being an athlete, my day-to-day life has got so much easier. my ability to be able to even silly things like keep my eyes overhead to wash my hair, or dress myself, or I hope PIP aren't listening to all of this stuff, but you know, like be able to do day-to-day stuff is making it so much easier through being a fitter and healthier and understanding your body more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, completely. I completely agree. And you know, not to recruit people for wheelchair basketball, but what you were saying before about how it improves your coordination, it really does. Like, and it's and that's with anything, like I say, not just wheelchair basketball, but anything that is going to be difficult if you keep doing
two things at once. Yeah.
Exactly. Like for me right now, talking and looking at the chat at the same time. But I think, you know, just having a quick look at the chat, Claire, you said so my local pool now has a changing village. I haven't checked yet, but I'm skeptical how many accessible cubicles will be in it, especially if there's more than one disabled swimmer / families in the session. What I'd say on that, I don't know about you, Siobhan, but what I'd say is just go and have a look, and have a chat to them. Do.
Absolutely. And sometimes this is gonna, and I'm speaking this from probably a naive point of view, because obviously I can walk and things like that, so I don't want to vouch for people that can't necessarily use them, but sometimes within the able-bodied changing rooms, they're actually better than some of the disability facilities, because they have the bigger rooms for the children, like especially swimming pools. And a lot of my discussions when I talk about them is, you clearly haven't spoken to a disabled person before you've designed this room, because the door opens inwards, not outwards. The thing on that doesn't reach that thing, and the wire over there you can't reach, things like that. So I think, like you said, go and have a look. And if you can't do it, speak to them about what they can provide for you.
That's an interesting point, because I've often found sometimes the disabled changing rooms are actually not much different to the more of a disabled toilet rather than a disabled changing room. And I found I use a chair, but sometimes I found the benches or something. Nowadays it's different because changing places and things like that, more places have more
they have to now, don't they, as rules.
But it used to find the disabled changing room for a swimming pool was actually just a disabled toilet, and actually for the bench or something to sit on to get myself changed, actually the normal changing room was better.
They would think you've got your chair, so you can just use that, but they don't think about the fact you don't want to get your chair soaking wet while you're getting changed. Like, honestly, I know we're going away from sport, but changing rooms as a whole, like in New Look and Primark and all these different places, I go into them. I never try clothes on in shops, because they just go, wow, you don't need to use a disabled one. I'm like, yes, but just because I can stand doesn't mean I need to sit down to to try things on. So I understand it's a frustration, and sadly, as sad as it is to say, I don't think as much as these walls are putting in, it's going to change. It's going to be a 10-15 year place.
Yeah, it is improved. Changing rooms are improving, but yeah, you're right. I am planning on going and having a look at that changing room. I just kind of keep planning to go to the other pool, which I know
if you're too scared,
one way I know that
if you're too scared to actually go into the thing, just have a phone call with them. So they don't see you face to face, and you never have to see them if they say no. I think for sometimes if you turn up and they look at you and go, "Oh, she's disabled. How do we have this conversation with her? Are we going to say something that's offensive?" Over a phone, they won't have that thing. So my biggest advice is just give them a phone call. If you're too scared, I'll ring them for you.
We'll all
I
ring
just
them.
need to go and look at it, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But it's easy, like so, when we're so used to things not being set up to us, it's easy to assume before you to something. Oh, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be. We've kind of, what's the word? Made ourselves, we kind of automatically, we've trained ourselves to prepare for the worst in some ways, haven't we?
Definitely. But like Siobhan was saying, like, ring them, ask them to send you some photos. If you don't want to go there, just ask for some photos, give them your email address.
That's a good idea, actually.
Because then you
don't get embarrassed, and they don't get embarrassed. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from going into gyms is they're too scared to ask the question, because we live in such a politically correct world, and I know that's right, and there should be rules, and I'm not saying that we should go around calling all people innocent, but what I find going up in schools and now doing school visits, things like that, they've never actually asked you as the person what you need. So if you do it over the phone, there's none of that embarrassing face contact where they just get embarrassed if actually can do more than them.
No, exactly. Miriam, you have your hand up. You're on mute.
Still not quite used to it. One is just my ignorance. What does SSE mean? You said it, the SSE, a bit earlier. Did you? In that an acronym? No.
Was it S and C?
Oh, was it S and C?
Yeah,
Oh, strengthening
conditioning.
conditioning.
Yeah,
Fine,
sorry,
that's
that was
good. I heard that one and then I heard it again, so that's fine. And the second thing is, because you have had such an amazing experience growing up, and that your early years were very proactive. So therefore, when you hit that wall at at secondary school. But what I'm interested to find out is about the habit forming that so do you, because I think that as adults, it's quite easy to, unless you've had that discipline, as it were, when real life takes over and there are other priorities. So during your A levels, for instance, because that was possibly the time when you weren't doing as much. How did you sort yourself out?
I think the biggest thing,
your focus.
I think the biggest focus for me was I knew what the benefits of doing it were. So yes, representing my country and all that, fantastic. Part that a bit, forget that I'm a GB athlete. I think the biggest benefit for me was how much I declined in day-to-day activities and my ability to be able to live my independent life as independent as I had been when I was stopping doing exercise in any form. So at 16, 17, I wasn't the GB team, but it wasn't what I thought I was on the GB team, if that makes sense. It was nothing as elite as I am now. So I probably was only doing 3 or 4 sessions a week as opposed to daily. And even to stopping that, I saw such a decline in both my mental health ability to be able to be strong-willed and do things myself and be passionate about wanting to go out and do things and do extra things at the weekend, all the way to being able to do physical things. I couldn't walk as far as I used to be able to. My stability and balance had altered. My general happiness had altered. And I think that was probably the biggest thing now. And even if I have, like this week I'm off, so our coach is on annual leave, we've had a forced week off because our season's going to be really, really busy. Probably I'm going to jinx it now. I've actually looked forward to this week off and now bored on day 3. And I think that's the biggest thing, is I now struggle to rest. Because I think, well, if I stop, like, I'm not going to be able to remember how to bounce the ball. I'm not going to be able to remember to do this, and I'll go back and I won't be selected, and I won't be this. And I now struggle with that, with the other end of it, in that my coach says to me, Siobhan, just take a day off. Like, just have a rest, your body will be fine. And actually, it's the best thing I can do. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I had COVID. Minor, thank goodness. I only tested positive for 2 days. But obviously I had to have a forced time away from the team. I couldn't go out, isolated, all that thing. And having those 5 days off training was probably the best thing. So when I came back, I actually had some of my best performance times and some of my best things. So sometimes now I struggle to find that balance between rest and being overactive. And the biggest thing I can say to you guys as an adult, not having that motivation, and I think I can even say it as my sister, who used to be really sporty, now got a full-time job and's now not, and me going, Laura, come on, go to the gym, do this, do that, it's just a habit. And I think once you get out of that habit, you don't do it. It's as quick to get into the habit. So you go, you make a pact to yourself and go, right, this week I'm going to go twice. And then it becomes a thing where you're going twice every week and you can't remember a time where you didn't do that. So yeah, I think for me is find that routine that works for you. Find that time of day that works for you, where you can allocate 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, it's going to be more than you did yesterday. So yeah.
And just as an addition, just to keep it all in perspective, because I'm the odd one out here, I do not have CP, but
let us down.
But what you're saying resonates with me too, because it's that discipline, it's that sticking to it. It doesn't matter, like you say, you have the benefit of it, you can feel the buzz of it, but everyone can feel the buzz of it and the benefit of it. And it's just about, as we move our bodies through time, they change and we need to look after them as well.
My biggest thing is, like, we can all happily sit for an hour and watch a Netflix thing, or we can all sit for half an hour and watch Coronation Street or whatever, and you achieve absolutely nothing in that half an hour. But if you do, people say, oh, I haven't got enough time to do this, or I can't cook this meal, or I can't do that. You can, like, you can do it. And I know lives are busy and people have got children, they've got other commitments, but that 5-10 minutes, even if you're sitting on the settee, get your resistance bands and just do some movement. Like, you can do it, and it makes you feel, and I know it's easy for me to say because I'm an athlete and I love sport and it makes me so happy, and without it I'm really sad, but it does make you happy. It really does make you happy. It puts you in such a better mood, and it is so much better for everyone around you to be in a happy mood. So find something that you enjoy and stick with.
Yeah.
Definitely. And isn't it scientific? Like, doesn't doing movement release endorphins, which is happiness?
I never believed it was a thing. I never believed it was a thing. I used to think, yeah, no, it won't. It really does.
Yeah,
it really does.
No, definitely. Emma, you have your hand up.
It was just something that Claire said that I wanted to say, is that, Claire, if you're brave enough to go and ask your gym the questions, whether it's on the phone, or the way that sometimes I get over the fact that I'm nervous is that I'm paving the way for somebody else, because through them dealing with you, somebody else will have an easier journey next time. I don't know if that's helpful, but sometimes
That's so helpful.
it's not about me, it's about me doing it for somebody else. I find it a little bit easier because I also get very embarrassed about asking questions.
No,
I know none of you will believe that, but that's true. It's very true. So that was my thought about that.
No, I am quite good at speaking out, as you know, but I think it's just because I've just been out of a pool for too long.
Yeah, no, I understand
I just
that.
need to get back in the habit, and I've probably forgotten, like you say, I've probably forgotten how good I feel from doing it. I've probably forgotten how much I enjoy it. Once I get back in that routine, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just another little thing that kind of stops me going, oh, I'm not sure what changing room will be like, you know. It's just a load of excuses, really, that my head brings up.
So Siobhan, can I ask you, just while we're kind of talking about that, and I'm cheekily still on, is that we've talked about physical health and you touched on mental health, and that's something that we touched on quite a lot during, particularly during the isolation periods when we were during COVID. But if you're willing to talk a little bit about how sport and exercise affects your mental health, that would be really useful.
Absolutely. Thankfully, luckily, can't say enough positive words, I haven't actually majorly ever had any mental health blips, nothing that's made me feel really negative. And I know for a lot of you probably have had that, and I don't want to give you sympathy and say, oh my, that's really sorry, because it's okay to have that. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that physical, you can put a plastic on it, you could put a plaster on it, but I think mental health, you can't see it, so a lot of the time you shy away from talking about it. And I think the biggest thing that's sport, and I guess when I was 11 or 12 you could say it was mental health, but it could just be the fact I was young and whatever. I don't really want to say that was a mental health blip, but I think growing up in sport and being around other people from other walks of life and other disabilities, other backgrounds, people that had been adopted, car crashes, cancer, life-changing things, have all got their own backgrounds. And I think the biggest thing is that I learned is that no one's going to give you sympathy for what you've got to get through. No one's going to say, oh, they might give you a hug if you want to have a little cry on their shoulder and say, oh, look, I'm feeling really, really, really bad today, or really, really negative. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that you've got to find something that works for you. And you've got to find something that's going to get you up and make you happy. And you might have a week where you don't want to get out of bed, and that might turn into 2 weeks, but what's going to stop it from turning into the third week? And I think what I find the biggest thing when I'm having a negative thing, and after Tokyo I really struggled from a performance point of view, because we didn't perform, we didn't do what we wanted, our funding was affected. Georgia can probably say that Jude, her sister, was in the worst mood ever. Like, anything possibly was horrendous for the whole experience. And the biggest thing that got me out of that was finding my why of why I do it. And that was the improvement of what the sport gave me. Representing GB and doing that was fantastic, but what do you want to achieve in that day? What goal can you make from that day? Like today, I didn't do any sport today. I've got a leak in bathrooms, that's what I was fixing. But what can I achieve in today that's going to make it better tomorrow? What 5 minutes affirmation that I could do, take away from the world, turn the negative news off that's going on, turn off everything off in the background, it's going to make you happy. And that's probably the biggest advice. And also have those conversations, don't shy away from them. Share what you want to share, use people around you. I probably found the biggest thing is not necessarily sharing it with my family, but sharing it with someone a little bit more independent if you can, because they don't give you that sympathetic for you. They don't give you that, oh, it's okay, you're my daughter or you're my sister or whatever. They'll just say, oh, that's all right. come on now, let's go and do this together instead. So yeah, for me is keep having conversations with people. And I know lockdown was so bad for a lot of you, and just having a disability during lockdown is just horrendous, because you can't go and walk for 25 miles. I didn't know what to do as my activity. But I think brighter days are coming now. The rain's stopping, but at least we can look out into our garden and see a bit of sunshine, and just keep a smile on your face as best as you can.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I completely agree. Daisy, you have your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me? This is my first event.
Yes, yeah, we can.
So I'm a little bit nervous, but hello, Siobhan. Hello, everyone. I'm meeting a new physio tomorrow for the very first time. What questions might I ask my new physio just to be sure that they get it and I'm safe?
I love this question. Absolutely love this question. Firstly, I don't want to be too personal because it's on a phone call with other people, but are you in a chair or can you walk?
I can walk. If you look at me on a good day, you might not know that I have CP at all.
Yeah.
But I'm in my 40s and I feel it, and it is more pronounced than it has ever been.
Yeah.
So a little bit new for me as well as
so all I'm going to do is give you a bit of advice about the questions that I would ask. I'm not saying these are the questions you have to ask. These are the questions that I find that if I was to ask for physio now, that I wish that I'd asked when I was growing up, I would have asked. So if they don't answer the question, tell me and I'll try and help you a little bit more. The first question, well, the first piece of advice I would give you is to be totally honest with them. Don't try and do what I used to do and give this perfect perception that CP is not affecting you at all. That you're absolutely fine, that you're living your best life, that you can do everything independently. In fact, lay it on worse than it probably is. Because that's what's going to make the change. That's what's going to make the most difference to you. That's what's going to hopefully give you that extra week with them. My next thing would be for you to also realise is that the change that a physio isn't going to do is not going to happen overnight. So don't go in there thinking that I'm going to meet this new physio, they're going to give me these great big things tomorrow, I'm going to be able to get out of bed with no pain. It's not going to do that. It's going to manage that. So the biggest thing that I can do for what I've learned from just speaking to coaches and physios is that it's a two-way thing. You give as much as they give, and I think that's probably the best thing that I can share. From a physio point of view, as you get older, I think it would be learning how to move better in a safe way. What can you do in the evening that's going to make the next morning easier or make your sleep better? Because I think sleep and recovery is probably the most important thing. I didn't harp on it about my presentation, but if I don't sleep and recover and I don't eat well, my CP the next day, it's prevalent. It's in everything that I do. I'm dropping things, I'm doing things, I'm doing everything differently. So for me, from a physio point of view, if I was the physio treating you, I would want to know how it affects you. I would want to know what it is that you want to necessarily change or learn how to deal with better. And also, when they try and fob you off, we're giving you the most basic exercises that anyone can get off Google, tell them you want more. But I hope it's a positive experience, and I hope that the first session, you're allowed to be nervous, but I honestly think they'll be more nervous dealing with you than you will be dealing with them, because it's a complicated thing. And I think that if you're not happy, tell them that you're not, and hopefully it will be a positive for you, and hopefully I'll be able to hear out and it's been a really positive experience for you.
Sorry, my family's chatting away in the background, but thank you. Yes, I hope that I get a sympathetic person who listens, because if they listen, that's 3/4 of the way. I find the physio provision reduces you sometimes to a series of body parts. So you have to tell them what hurts, and they've been very confused by the fact that 3 different things hurt. So my appointment.
What you say about hurt, I've actually learned from a physio point of view. So I get really, I know it's my thing, I get really bad lower back pain and shoulder pain from the way that I walk, but it's not actually my back and my shoulder that's the problem. It's actually the angle in which that I sit, or my knees or my ankles, or it's usually another body part that's causing the pain in the other body part. So if they say to you, well, your shoulder's hurting, therefore it's just your shoulder that they should treat, tell them no, that there's probably something else going on. Carry on.
It's really interesting because my appointment is an hour and a half long, because the more body parts you add, the longer they give you. But that's probably a positive. No, I'll see how I go. You stack up the bad experiences sometimes, and that can be quite.
I think the best thing you can do is eliminate them bad experiences, because I think if you go into that appointment thinking that it's going to be negative, then you aren't going to give everything that you need to give. You can't control what the physio is going to be like. You can't control if they're going to listen, but you can control what you give to that appointment. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that you're in your 40s and that you are getting physio provisions. And I think that's just something that we did a load of work earlier in the year, didn't we, about how that hasn't been possible. So the fact that that's even becoming a thing, it's gold dust. So take it as a positive that you're even able to have that provision for a start, and then I hope that it continues for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and that your age with CP, if that's the right way to put it, I mean that in a really positive way, in the best way that you possibly can, because I hope when I reach 40 that my physio provisions, and like Emma said earlier, you're paving the way for someone else. So the next person that comes along tomorrow, in a couple of years time, I remember treating Daisy all them 2 years ago. This is what I did with her. So just be confident and know that it will be a positive experience. It will be.
Just as with my physio hat on, I'm just going to butt in as well, because I can't not say something. So my question would be, if you don't know yet, find out what type of physio the person you're seeing is, because sometimes you can be referred to musculoskeletal physios if it's a joint issue that is on your referral form, and musculoskeletal physios don't necessarily have the same insight or depth of understanding how the muscle tone can affect the joints. So in my experience, musculoskeletal physios get a little bit wobbly when they have a person who has underlying neuro condition presented to them, and if that is the case, I would possibly say to them, is it possible for me to see one of your neurological physio colleagues? And I would be as confident and assertive, because you're entitled to a physio appointment, which is fine, but you need to get the right physio to meet with you, to understand the complexity of what's going on with your whole body, not just individual body parts. And that's what will maybe make the difference.
Yes, it's one of those things. It's been 10 months. It's taken 10 months. They are MSK. I was fine with MSK before lockdown, but I've deconditioned. I've previously been told that I'm not disabled enough for neuro, so it's just tricky. But anyway, I will gratefully, I'll take what I've got, go in there with an open mind, and see how I get on.
And keep us posted, Daisy. It'll be brilliant to see if there's any other support we can give you, and cheer you on the sides.
Thanks.
I was going to say that, keep us posted, definitely. There is a question in the chat. What does eat well mean to you?
Very different things depending on which hat I have on. Do I have my athlete hat on, or do I have my Siobhan hat on? No. As a whole, like, so even take athlete and me out of it, eating well for me is, as cliche as it sounds, is what can I do that's going to put me in the best place for tomorrow, the next day, the week's time? How am I going to sustain myself through the winter so I don't get an illness? How am I going to sustain myself through travel on an aeroplane for 6 times a year in the next 3 months, six times in the next 3 months, so I don't get poorly? And I think for people with CP, and a lot of you on the call, eating for us can sometimes be a challenge, and digesting food and different textures with foods and swallowing with food and everything else that comes with it can be a challenge. And I think that's probably another thing that I've learned as an athlete, is that I can't generically have the same things as everyone else. So as an athlete, I'm very strict now with packing my own food when I'm abroad and staying within my safe foods. That sounds a bit bizarre, but I struggle with digestion and being able to basically digest food. I can go through weeks of not being able to keep food down and then being absolutely fine. And I've gone through various tests and they basically just turn around to me and say, you've got CP, get on with it. So I'm not like celiac or gluten-free or anything like that, but they basically just say, we don't know what's going on. Some days your tone's really high, so you can't digest food. Sometimes you can't get on with it. So I've now found a diet, especially in my own house, I'm fine, you know what works. But even when I go to restaurants, things that work for you. And nutritionally wise, as long as I have lots and lots of protein, so your chickens and your yogurts and things that are going to be fast releasing, my body's fantastic. If I have a takeaway that involves so much grease, the next day my function's less. It's really bizarre. People, obviously, you see these things on news that say alcohol takeaways affect you. As a CPF person, they affect you even more. And I know I'm speaking through me, so it's a bit bizarre to be saying it, but they do affect you a lot more. So for me, eating well is a balanced diet for me. So as much veg and fresh produce as I possibly can get in, and making food exciting, not boring, taste well. But yeah, I'm pretty straightforward with what I have, really.
Great, thank you. There is a question in the chat before I come to Dean. Georgia has asked, do you find it difficult when you have to be around your teammates 24/7 at tournaments?
Not when I have to be around your sister, Georgia. No, it is difficult. It is really difficult. And I think they become your second family. So you are with them. I can be with the girls 3-4 weeks, 24 hours a day. You can be with that roommate 24 hours a day. We have to do practice isolations in case we got COVID during Tokyo, and we were with that person in a hotel room forever. So if you don't like them, you better start to like them. And I think the biggest thing that I learned, and it's luckily we all get on, we're all similar ages. So I'm 24, youngest on the national team is 22, the oldest is 32. So we're in a pretty short age span. There's only 10 years between us, which is big in some aspects, not big in others. The biggest thing that I learned, Georgia, was that it's okay not to be their best friend, and that it's okay to not necessarily want to be with them all the time, and if you want to put your headphones on, it's okay. And that also within a disabled sport, that everyone has different needs and different backgrounds and different impacts that have got them to that spot. So for me, being born disabled, I know no different. So managing my disability in a different country, in a different environment, is no different from my managing it at home, because I've just got to go on with it. For some of the girls that have got to do, personal care and everything else with their different disabilities away from home is difficult. And I think the biggest thing is just let them do their thing and don't try and with them and don't try and help them through it. And I think that we all get on really well because we're really honest with each other. And I think even you as an organisation tonight with each other, use each other around you to be able to learn things from each other. You've put teammates, but really we're a bunch of sisters. Really, we argue with each other, we natter with each other, we have a great time with each other. On the court on a Friday night, we go out with each other. So I think the biggest thing is that I've learned from being with them that really, if you're honest with each other, and you do it with a smile on your face, that you'll get on really well. And we have a great bunch of girls there. So yeah,
that's great. That sounds like a good environment, which is always nice. It's a good thing it's conducive, isn't it, to have
I think it's quite difficult as well. I know it's going away from the talk a little bit, but we have male coaches, and we have a male support staff, and so I didn't really speak about that either. We have a male S&C coach, we have a male male physio now within our Loughborough setup, and I think that's also difficult when you've got and even if you have male, even if you guys go to see male gyms and things like that, and building that relationship with other people, and not being scared of building that relationship, no matter their background or what they are, and they're going to treat you exactly the same. And I think within our GB setup, it doesn't matter your background or your ethnicity or your disability or whatever. Safe environment, you can be together. But I think that's what I find difficult then, like last night going to the public gym, is that you weren't in that safe environment. And so for you guys that aren't in that, again, I want to say safe environment again, I need a different word, but the environment where you can be yourself, where you don't mind what you do, don't be afraid now to go and do that in the public, because you're never going to see them people again. And if you do, who cares? what are they going to do? Go home and make a little bit of a joke about you? It really doesn't matter. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is I now don't care whether, you know, so Meadow Hall, big shopping centres down the road. If I go down there and walk around there and people laugh at the way I walk, don't care about it. You know, and or if you have to go to a restaurant, you have to use a straw when you cook, or whatever the adaptation you have to make, it doesn't matter. Just go out there and go and do it and be yourself and be happy. Because there's a lot of sadness in the world right now, and I think the biggest thing that we can do as an organisation and this charity is just make it a positive thing and showcase that having CP isn't a negative.
Definitely. I think we can all agree with that. Dean, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. Sorry, I thought I was still on mute.
Sorry.
Siobhan, sorry, can I just say something to Daisy in response to what the advice that Marilyn gave her about a physio appointment tomorrow?
Of course you can.
Daisy, just wanted to say to you, now I'm not talking as a physio because I'm not a physio, but I'm talking as a person with CP, and I'm now in my 50s. And I know you're going for your appointment tomorrow, and I heard you say the words, you're going to go in there tomorrow and take their advice. But like Miriam said, you know, there's absolutely no harm in asking to ask, you know, could they refer you to be referred to like a neurological neurophysio, you know, because the thing is, once that appointment's gone tomorrow, then you might have to make another appointment to see a neurophysio. It's just something I just wanted to, just a bit more advice, just to encourage you to ask for what, you know, take Miriam up on her advice that she's given you, because yeah, that's all I wanted to say, really. Thank you.
Thanks,
Dean.
As well, Daisy, just on that, if you have questions, write them down, because from my experience, when I go to like a new physio or anything like that, I'm always so nervous. So just write everything.
Rehearse what you're going to say no matter what. It's even me like doing talks tonight. I can rehearse in your head what you're going to say. When you get in that room, that environment, it changes. So yeah, that's it. Now write it down. That's a great advice.
Definitely. Does anyone else have any other questions? We still have like 10 minutes. But I mean,
can I ask a question to the room if anyone wants to answer it?
Of course.
What does, just to throw it out there, because obviously I'm speaking from a naive elite sport world, and I guess apart from the struggles that I had as a primary child, I've never really had a struggle to access clubs and sport, because I've never needed to have that struggle, because I've always been on the GB team. So do any of you do sports now? And I know Claire's working on swimming. Do any of you have any provisions for clubs or anything as a charity that you could do to sport and fitness to do together to make it less nervous to go into public environments? Because if you don't, that is something that I'm going to sort.
I think if it's all right to just jump in, because I'm already spotlighted anyway. So I feel like, as I said, I do wheelchair basketball, but I still have to travel a good hour and a half to do wheelchair basketball. I used to horse ride, and again, I had to travel an hour for that. And I've just taken up parachuting. I always find it really hard to say that, shooting. And again, I have to travel like 2 hours for that. And I think personally for me, if there was more provision, like, it would be great. And locally, so our local authority here, so I'm in a London borough, so you'd think I'd be spoilt for choice, but for the borough that I live in, any kind of disability sport is aimed at kids. And I'm 32, and that's, like, for me, that's the biggest thing that I find, definitely. But that obviously is just my experience.
No, and that's great, Chair. I think that's what I'm finding now when so I do primary school visits, secondary school visits, and I've started to do a little bit more of like charity-based stuff and things like that. And a lot of them are saying, like, I had to travel to my local club to make the GB team 2 hours. I had to, and obviously growing up, you can't drive, and some people with disabilities can't drive and make adaptations. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is just make more noise about making those provisions for adults. Because if you Google, and I did it now, I work with a couple of people that do it, and they're like, oh, it's for till you get to 17. I'm like, yes, but we also don't get physio appointments, we don't get hospital appointments, we can't do this, we can't get into work, we can't do this, and now you're telling me I can't do sport. Like, what can we do that's going to make it happen? And I don't know what the answer is, because it's easy for me to say to you, all join your local fitness club and do it, because it's not a thing. But I definitely think that needs to be something that we can do, even if it's something we do as I speak to Emma after, about something that we could do to help us along that way and have that conversation. I'll send across some of, like, Ella Beaumont's videos are fantastic start, and that exercise app, I'll get that link sent, because honestly it's really helped me, and I'm an elite athlete. But yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. Now I didn't even think about an adult perspective about what there is provided, apart from all I think of, honestly, and this sounds really awful, but you think of children and then you think of retirement home, like keep fit classes. Don't think of any, there's never anything for that age group in the middle.
No.
So I definitely think that we could become millionaires now.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. That's it. We're staying on after this. We're having a chat.
Dragon's Den an idea. Come on.
Just before I come to Emma's hand up, there's just some comments in the chat. So Jean says, I cycle with Cycle Derby in a park 5 miles away. So that's cool that it's really close. And she's also added 70 years of making a noise. This group is a group of friends, which is really nice. Emma, you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to pick up on something that you'd said, kind of in relation to, so what I noticed from your story is that you found your love of sport as a child. So I just want to say thank you for going around and talking to the teachers and being in secondary schools and talking about the fact that it's really important to get into sport when you're a child, because I think that also, you know, I grew up in a family that I didn't really do sport because I couldn't, so I spent a lot of time watching my sister at gymnastics class and ballet classes and tap dance classes, and so my association with sport or with exercise was quite negative until I needed to do it. And I've actually found a real love of, I can't tell you that I'm into sport because I'm not, but
no, I know what you mean, that you
swimming,
find that passion.
I like swimming. I know that when I'm having not such a great happy day in my head, and the last thing I want to do is go outside for a walk, the best thing that I can do is go for a walk. And like you said, it's from experience that I know that, even though I don't want to do it, something inside me is saying, go on, do it, because you know that you're going to feel better. And I love the thought that you find your motivation. So I always say that my motivation is my kids, which sounds really cheesy, but I want to be as active a mum as possible. That's my drive. So even if I don't want to do the physio and I don't want to do anything, that's what keeps me going. So I like the idea of and I know we're talking to a group of adults, but it's about finding the sport or the activity that you love, and if you can do that as a child, I think that would make it easier.
Honestly, my dream would be to have inclusive sport, not even call it disability sport, but just instead of a football lesson, they do bocce, or they do, I don't know, paddle, whatever. It doesn't have to be wheelchair basketball. I'm not saying the school has to buy 10 wheelchairs. Like, I know that's not possible. But all I'm asking when I speak to schools is, stop making me be the timekeeper. Stop making me be the person that has to write the names on the list of paper. Like, I am more than capable of throwing a ball or catching a ball or whatever X might be. Like, why can't you let them do it? And they're just too scared to have that conversation. And my dream would be to get it on the curriculum. That's probably not going to happen soon, but that would be my dream. So right now I'm just going around to as many schools as I possibly can. Sometimes they love it, sometimes they don't, and just say, look, you have that disabled child. They don't even have CP, but you have that disabled child. Why are they not doing something, and why are they not providing it? And even on an adult level, like Claire was saying about changing rooms in gyms, if environments were made that made it just that 1% easier for you to be able to go to that event or even spectate sport. So I'm not saying you have to go away. If it was easier, so I didn't have to ring a helpline to go and get tickets to go somewhere, and I could just book a disabled ticket the same with my peers, it would make it so much easier to go and watch football or rugby or go to Wembley or whatever X might be. I didn't even realise that me as it sounds really bizarre, but I don't actually call myself disabled. So I didn't realise I had to ring a helpline because I didn't want to walk up loads of stairs to go and watch a sporting event. And then I missed out on the tickets because I was supposed to ring this number 2 days before the tickets were released. So there's so many changes that need to be made. And I think as the adults on the phone call, you must love watching sport in some capacity, and if you don't, you must love arts and crafts, or there must be something that makes you want to do something, or video games, or whatever it is. Just continue to do it to make you happy.
And Nat knows how much I love getting through to accessibility lines, because I'm always phoning her because that's her. But the other thing I wanted to kind of say is that, and it's just gone floating out of my head. But I think you were saying about barriers and changing rooms and things like that, and that is all brilliant. But what I would really like to see is a change in attitude. I think that is the biggest barrier that stops me feeling comfortable going into a gym. And I loved what you said about everybody feeling like that. That's fantastic. But I think if we can change some attitudes, which is why I say to Claire, go ask those questions, because you can start to change attitude. That's the biggest way that we're going to make a change within the fitness industry, because sometimes my experience has been that they say yes, it's inclusive because they have a the
way they treat you with that,
or they have a changing room that I can use, but their attitude isn't one that makes it inclusive for me to be at. So that would be my thing.
100%. Dean, is that a hand up?
Yes, it is. It's with a little finger. It's my school hand.
It's a real hand. I forgot what they look like.
I just wanted to say, and it's very, very rare. It's only, I mean, when in mainstream, because I was in mainstream when I was in the SEN unit, and I was eventually full time in mainstream. But when I was when in mainstream, when the other lads were doing PE, mainstream PE, like football or whatever, I did needlework. Well, a friend of mine, he went to a mainstream school. He got CP. He's got CP. And he, when they did cross country running, he did cross country running, but he did it at a slower pace, and he had the support of a TA. But and to back up what you've said, it can be done. It's just the
surely needlework with CP is harder than you do in football. Just putting it out there. The dexterity for needlework's got to be harder than doing PE. I think that's a really good point to make, is that some schools are fantastic. And I feel like also if the PE department have a knowledge of disability, so if they have a sibling or a child or something themselves, they're more willing to not be scared to have the conversation. But I think Emma nailed it, is the attitude around it. So they might, so for me in the end, when I made the team and I was like year 9, so third year, so 14, 15, they wanted me in sport. They wanted me back in school doing sport. But for the first 2 years, they didn't want me in it. But because I could finally provide a wheelchair for them, they were more than happy to have me in class. And I think it's the attitude around the fact that they just don't want to make the change, that they're just more than happy for you to go, oh, well, you'll be all right. Like, you seem quite happy. You're performing well at school, so there's no real problems. I think it's more they're just too scared to make any changes, more than the fact that they don't know how to. It's just that they just don't want to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think on that, we're just coming up to 8 o'clock now. So the only thing that's left to say is just thanks, Siobhan. And I think that's it. Emma and Miriam, I guess over to you.
I guess I just wanted to add my huge thanks for all the work that you do to support our charity and for coming tonight. It's really appreciated. And if I could bottle some of the things you say, I really would. I think you've made some really fantastic points and some insights.